It ended. Maybe suddenly, maybe slowly, maybe long before the paperwork was signed. You thought forever meant forever. You made promises, you shared dreams, you built a life together. And now, it's shattered. The silence after a breakup isn't just quiet, it's deafening. You sit in a room full of memories, but the person you were building with is gone. This is divorce, not just the legal unraveling of a contract, but the personal collapse of something sacred. And you're left wondering, what now? Here's where the Stoics step in, not to offer comfort, but clarity. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Divorce is the storm. You are the ship, and your mind is the wheel. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels unfair. Yes, it leaves questions that may never be answered. But pain is not the enemy. Attachment is. The belief that you must hold on to what's already left. The Stoic does not pretend they are not wounded. They simply refuse to become their wound. So you don't deny the grief. You feel it, fully. You let it move through you without building a home inside you. Because healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without breaking. When Marcus Aurelius lost his wife, he didn't fall apart. He grieved, but he continued. Because he knew his peace was not tied to her presence. It was tied to his practice, his daily return to reason. That's your path now, not to get over it, but to grow through it. Your identity was never meant to be wrapped in another person. You are not half of a whole. You are a whole, still here, still breathing, still worthy. The pain of divorce is real, but it doesn't get to define you. Not if you don't let it. So take this moment, this silence, this space, not to collapse, but to rebuild, quietly, intentionally, powerfully, because that's what Stoicism offers. Not escape, but endurance, not comfort, but clarity. It says, you can walk away with nothing and still have everything if your mind is intact. So what do you do now? You simplify. You return to yourself. You observe every emotion that rises and choose not to obey it blindly. You journal, you walk, you breathe. You let the world spin while you remain still. And when the questions come, why did this happen? Could I have done more? Was any of it real? You respond the way a Stoic would. Maybe, maybe not. But what can I do now? Because power lives in the present. And peace. Peace lives in letting go of what you cannot control. You don't need revenge. You don't need answers. You don't need their apology. You need presence, discipline, and a quiet decision to not let this break you. They left. Or maybe you did. But a part of you still waits for the message, the explanation, the apology that finally makes it all make sense. It never comes. And you sit in that silence, asking the same question again. Why? This is the trap. Not the pain itself, but the addiction to answers. The mind thinks that if it could just understand, just know why they changed, why they lied, why they stopped choosing you, then the pain would ease. But Stoicism says otherwise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, it's because they think it's right for them. You don't have to join them. You don't have to follow them down the spiral of why. You don't need to unpack their behavior to free yourself from its impact." The Stoic understands, closure is not something they give you, it's something you decide. You don't find peace at the end of a perfect explanation. You find it the moment you stop needing one. Because what hurts most isn't what they did. It's the gap between what you expected and what happened. And the bigger the gap, the deeper the ache. But that ache doesn't need to be filled with words. It needs to be met with reality. They left. They chose differently. They acted outside of who you thought they were. And that's painful. But it's not personal. It's not punishment. It's just people. People are unpredictable. They shift, they grow, or they don't. They make choices that hurt us, often without thinking twice. That's not fair, but it's life. The Stoic knows you don't make sense of suffering by chasing someone who caused it. You make peace with suffering by mastering your reaction to it. You reclaim your mind. You redirect your energy. You return your attention to what's in your control. Not their choices, not their words, but your path forward. So no, don't wait for the text. Don't refresh the feed. Don't reread the last conversation looking for clues. Let it be. Let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. And because clinging to the need for closure keeps you shackled to a story that no longer wants to be written. The real closure isn't in their mouth, it's in your mind. It's the moment you say, I may never understand it, but I won't carry it anymore. That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's stoicism. When a marriage ends, it's not just the relationship that disappears, it's the rhythm, the rituals, the version of yourself that only existed in that shared space. Suddenly, you're not a spouse anymore. You're not us. You're just you. And that can feel terrifying, because so much of your identity was built around them. What they needed, what you gave, what you became to keep it all together. Now there's space, silence, and a question that won't leave you alone. Who am I without them? The Stoics never told you to avoid this question. They invited you to live inside it. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." That fear you're feeling, of loneliness, of emptiness, of not knowing, it's not weakness. It's the sound of your mind unlearning dependence. Divorce rips away the illusion of permanence, but it also reveals something else, something deeper, something the Stoics held sacred: self-sufficiency, not in a cold, hardened way, but in the calm realization that you are still whole. You always were. You just forgot. Because love, especially the consuming kind, can make you forget. It's not just the person you miss, it's the person you thought you were around them. The version of you that felt needed, loved, chosen. But now you're here, and the only voice left is your own. This is where rebuilding begins. Not with a rebound, not with distractions, but with presence. With waking up in the quiet and resisting the urge to fill it. With sitting in the ache and saying, I am not broken, I am in process. The Stoics remind you, nothing external defines your worth. Not a partner, not a title, not a status update. Who you are is not what happened to you. It's what you choose to do next. So you journal, you walk, you speak less and listen more to yourself. You revisit the things you gave up, the hobbies you left behind, the voice you silenced to keep the peace. And you begin, brick by brick, to rebuild the self. Not the old self, not the partnered self, but the true self. The one that can stand in solitude and not shrink. You don't need to rush it. The Stoic path is not a sprint. It's a discipline, a slow, steady return to inner order. You stop asking who they were. You start asking who you are, now, here, whole. And if this journey speaks to you, if you're ready to rebuild, not just recover, subscribe, because Inner Fort isn't just a channel, it's a space to remember your strength, quietly, intentionally. Together, you're still standing, but some days, just barely. The weight of loss doesn't always show on the outside. It hides, in your breath, in the silence after a memory hits, in the way you scroll past old photos like landmines. This is heartbreak, not a break, a slow burn. And some days, it feels like it'll never end. But the Stoics never told us to run from pain. They told us to repurpose it. Epictetus said, difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Pain is not proof you're broken. It's proof you're alive. And more than that, it's an invitation. Because every ache, every sting of memory, every lonely night can be turned into something quiet, something disciplined, something stronger than before. Pain is raw material. you decide what it becomes. Let it become wisdom. Let it become fuel. Let it become silence that strengthens, not silence that punishes. This is the Stoic path, not to avoid suffering, but to meet it with intention. So what does that look like in practice? It means, instead of drowning in memories, you write through them. Instead of trying to numb the pain, you sit with it, without judgment. Instead of collapsing into, "Why me?" you whisper, "What now?" And every time you do that, you're training your mind. You're sharpening your spirit. You're stepping into a version of yourself that couldn't have been born any other way. Not in comfort, not in ease, but in pressure, pain, and eventually, peace. Heartbreak is not the end. It's the forge. It's where your false selves burn away, where ego dies, where clarity rises from the ashes. That's why Stoics don't dramatize heartbreak. They refine it through quiet repetition, daily rituals, micro-disciplines, the walk you take instead of the text you send, the deep breath instead of the angry reply, the silence instead of the spiral. Every one of these is strength, and it doesn't look like victory, it looks like stillness. And eventually, one day you realize, the heartbreak didn't destroy you, it built you. They hurt you, maybe they betrayed you, maybe they walked away without looking back. And still, there's a voice inside that says, I should forgive. But how do you forgive someone who never asked for it, who never took responsibility, who maybe never will? The Stoics have an answer, but it's not soft, and it's not sentimental. It's practical, powerful, liberating. Because forgiveness, to a Stoic, isn't about the other person. It's about you. Epictetus wrote, when someone does wrong, they harm themselves, not you, unless you allow it. Let that sink in. You don't forgive to free them. You forgive to free your mind. Reconciliation isn't the goal. That requires mutual change, mutual effort, mutual respect. And sometimes, that's impossible. But forgiveness? That's yours to give, silently, privately, without applause. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean reunion. It doesn't even mean conversation. It means, I will no longer allow your choices to poison my peace. It means letting go of the hope that one day they'll say the perfect words that heal the scar they left. Because the truth is, you don't need closure from someone who couldn't offer you respect. You don't need them to make it right for you to move forward. The Stoic doesn't hold grudges, not because they're weak, but because grudges are heavy, and the journey is long. So how do you start? You observe the resentment, you name it. You stop pretending you're over it when you're not. And then, you decide not to feed it. Every time you stop replaying the argument. Every time you resist checking their profile. Every time you notice the bitterness and breathe through it, you're forgiving. Not for them, for you. Because carrying the pain keeps you bonded, and you don't owe them that anymore. Your peace doesn't need permission. Forgiveness is a boundary. It says, you don't get to rent space in my mind for free. You don't get to shape my story beyond this chapter. And that's not cold, that's sacred. It's how you heal with dignity. It's how you close the book without needing applause or closure. You survived the heartbreak, the silence, the dismantling of what you once called home. Now, the world feels open, but not easy. Not yet. You wonder, will I ever trust again? Will I love again without looking over my shoulder? Will I open my heart without bracing for the fall? The Stoics never promised life without pain, but they offered something far better, life without fear of pain. Marcus Aurelius wrote, don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Stick with the present situation. That means when love returns, in any form, through any person, or simply within yourself, you meet it as it is, not as you fear it might become. You don't project the past onto the present. You don't armor up with cynicism. You don't run from beauty just because it once turned to ash. Instead, you stay open, not foolish, not reckless, but aware. Because Stoic strength isn't about never falling again. It's about falling without forgetting who you are. You love with eyes open, with standards clear, with your identity rooted in yourself, not in who they might become. You don't chase completion. You offer wholeness. And if they leave again, you won't fall apart. Because now you know, you are not your loss. You are not your partner. You are not your pain. You are your practice, your choices, your presence. You build a life from stillness, from simplicity, from self-respect. And if love fits inside that life, welcome it. But if not, you're still whole, because loss didn't destroy you. It revealed you. The Stoic doesn't fear new beginnings. They fear wasting the present in bitterness over the past. You don't need to be afraid anymore. You've already been through the fire, and you didn't disappear. You refined, so love again, laugh again, live again, not because you've forgotten the pain, but because it taught you how to carry peace. If this series brought you clarity, if you're walking this road with calm steps and a quiet mind, subscribe. You're not rebuilding alone, you're part of a fort, and this is only the beginning.